My name is Joe Queally. I'm a native of Fanore in North Clare, just at the head of the Bodden border. And today I'm going to tell you the story and the background to a book I have written on Echoes from a Civil War, which I launched in the past 12 months. I've been lucky enough all my life, maybe for the past 40, 50, 60 or 70 years, to listen to the old people in Fanore, to listen to their stories and to sit down with them and to record and to write down what the stories they told me. What prompted me, I suppose, to write Echoes from a Civil War, which a lot of people maybe might have said at the time would have been, a kind of a dangerous book to write because it was locals against locals. But anyway, I had a lot of history gathered. I had an awful lot of history gathered, and I found that when I started to write the story about Echoes from a Civil War, and Echoes from a Civil War tells the story of two members of Garda Síochána who were killed in North West Clare, one in 1925, the 28th of December 1925, and the other on the 11th of June 1929. And what prompted me, I suppose, to write the story was that when the bit of research that I had done into the one in Fanore was, it was the wrong man that was killed. And when I researched the one in, somebody told me, you have to write the one about in West Clare about the other guard that was killed. And the first thing that hit me was, it was the wrong man that was killed. So I had two wrong men that were to be killed, which prompted me maybe a little bit to ask the question, if there was two wrong men to be killed, was there two right men to be killed? And that's what really intrigued me in the story. But when I started to write the story of Echoes from a Civil War and Garda Dowling's murder, I found that not alone had I to live on the present and move on into the Civil War, but I also had to go back into the past, because the Civil War that happened, there was trimmings and there was tremblings of that for many, many years before that, because in North Clare, where I come from, it is probably one of the golden veil of Ireland with the Bodden land. And at that time, all the Bodden land was being used by absentee landlords. And after that time, the Moonlighters and the Irish Republican Brotherhood started with the Fenians, then the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and then the Moonlighters and the Terrials. And they were poor people. They really came from the poor of labourers and courtiers, and that they came from I suppose the poor areas of the county. And what happened was, you see, they moved in when the English landlord moved out. The Irish landlord moved in, and they were known, an awful lot of them, as grabbers. So you had two types of grabbers. You had a grass grabber and you had a grabber. And then you had the worst of all, that was in every county in Ireland, you had the Fiach Dove, or the Corach Lia, the raven. Now the raven, any sheep farmer will know, any sheep farmer will tell you that when they lose a lamb or they lose a sheep out the mountain or they lose a calf, after 2 days, you don't look at the landscape, you look at the sky to see where is the black crow, see where is the Fiach Dove. And the Fiach Dove is the meanest of the birds. He will go to a sheep and go to a lamb when they're on the flat of their back and pick the eyes out of them and kill them, in the same way with the calf. And the Fiach Dove and the land grabber was the person that looked out for somebody that was ailing, somebody that was ill, somebody that could not look after themselves anymore. And they moved in and they took their land. That was the most feared of all. And that was shimmering in the background and the Civil War gave an awful lot of people a chance to make ends meet and to kind of aggrieve that situation, to have a go at those people. And then I suppose when I had to tell that in the book as well, in the Echoes from the Civil War, I had to tell that in the book as well, to set the background. I just couldn't come into the Echoes from the Civil War and say this happened on the 28th of December and without going back into the background. So there was awful agrarian trouble in North West Clare before the Civil War at all. We had the Fanore school case that divided Fanore as well. And then when I had heard all the stories from all the old people around on echoes from the Civil War, and the guard that had been killed on three nights after Christmas night at the graveyard, by the side of the graveyard wall in Fanore, nobody could touch it for a long time. Nobody could touch that for a long time because the story, the local people were involved in it, and nobody wanted to put up their hand, as if it were, and tell the story. And when I started to research it and started to put together the research that I had done, I found that it wasn't a story of blame. It was a story that must be told, because on one side, that time when the split came due to the truce, you had the lawbreakers and the lawmakers. The lawbreakers had to step in to be the lawmakers, and all these people fought together weeks before the Civil War and weeks before they went into the Garda Síochána. There was no longer a place to hide. All these people fought together, and all of a sudden, in September of 22, the lawbreakers became the lawmakers, and they had to whip each other into shape. And there was units in North Clare, and there was units all over Ireland that kicked against the 26th county Ireland, kicked against the truce, and they wanted a 32 county Ireland, so you had De Valera versus the Free State. And that's what happened in North Clare. Some of the people took the side of the Free State, some of the people took the IRA, and there was one or two families in Fanore, and they joined the National Army. And when the local lads were brought in to be interrogated, the Free State soldiers gave them an awful time. So there was a divide, a very, very, very big divide there. So a lot of them, there was one man in it, Patrick McNamara, and he's in the book, and they maintained, the local people, the local story maintained that he was the man that they had hoped to ambush on the night of the 28th of December. Now, Patrick McNamara was in the National Army, and he joined the Dublin Metropolitan Police, and he used to come home now and again in his holidays. And when he was home, he would cycle with the guards on their duty. He would cycle with them on nights, just to be with them. And they thought that it would be a great time to ambush him and to kill him for what they had endured with him, with the terrible time he was supposed to have given them. Now, that was one of the stories that I picked up. There was another story. There was Mick Neville. Mick Neville was in the Kilmoon Brigade of the IRA, and Mick was killed in Dublin. Mick was killed in Dublin. The IRA attacked people in Eden Quay, and Mick was in Mooney's pub, and the Free State took Mick out and they gave him an awful time. That was another story I got, that's why they went to shoot one of the Free State people, the IRA. So when I started to write the book, sure, I suppose, to be honest about it, the photos were the big thing for me. Yes, by all means, the story was good, because I had gathered them from my mother, from the lighthouse keeper, from the old people, and they sat down with me at their fire, and I think I described it there in the book. I described it when I sat down with the old IRA people, sitting down by their fireside, and the fire burning, and the ashes, and the timber and the turf falling from the triangle, and the dog in the ash pit, and he giving letting off little snarls of dreaming, and the cat in the Sogon chair turned upside down, and the settle bed, and the bucket of spring water, and the white enamel mug, and the old IRA man telling me his story, because no one ever listened to him. And that was a very, very special part of the book. And that to me was the real heart and soul of the old IRA man telling me as to what happened on that night. But anyway, on the night of the 28th of December, they set up an ambush, the IRA, the local IRA, possibly Kilmoon Tuvaraha Brigade, because the locals would probably have been involved in it as well. So they set up an ambush for this Patrick McNamara, to set it up. So they chose the area of the road very, very carefully, where there was a nice little hill near the churchyard. So the people that would be cycling would have almost come to a stop, almost come to a standstill. by the time, and when three of them, two people came along the road, it was a windy moonlight night, and there was clouds coming across the face of the moon, and giving moments of darkness and blackness, and there was three men inside, next to the graveyard wall, not inside in the graveyard. So when the two guards came to the very top of the hill, they opened fire on them. And one of them looked out after and he said, "We have the wrong man got." That was the first theory of "we have the wrong man got." And that night, the IRA at that stage had little or no guns. They had to borrow a gun that night to shoot somebody. And what they did was, it was brutal. It was a brutal killing. What they did, but they were brutal times. These were the freedom fighters of Fanore, of North Clare, of Ireland. These were the freedom fighters. This is what they had to do. It was terrible. And what they did was, the ordinary shot, if you can see it here, the ordinary shot that's inside in a cartridge is small little pellets, very small little pellets, and they had that taken out of the cartridge. And what they put in was pieces of a broken pot. And if anybody would know anything about shooting, the bore of an ordinary cartridge is that, maybe 2 inches. And the bore of the broken pot would be 10 inches. So Garda Dowling, he was from Ballyragget in County Kilkenny, he died instantly. Now, they thought that the other person had seen them because he cycled on. And they fired at him as well. They had a shotgun and they had a rifle. And the funny thing, he escaped them. And there's a lovely little story attached to that. But when the following morning, he had his Gardaí coat tied up in the handlebars. And the following morning, when he untied his coat, the lead fell off of it. They had missed him. They had hit the coat. The lead bullets fell down on the ground. But my mother, may God be kind to her soul, was out the night that Garda Dowling was shot. She lived in the beautiful place up in the Clare. So they were going up through the fields, through their Boreen home. And she tells the story lovely. And I want to say that I suppose this again is the beauty of the folklore and of that. And I had no value in that. I had more value in, government records and police records and all that, and all stats and the whole lot. And it was Tomás McConamara that said to me, "Joe, you have to put in the folklore. That's what it's about. Touching the graveyard wall, touching the Boreen." But my mother told the lovely story. She says, we were going up home that night at 10 o'clock. They were down in Court at a house. And we were going up home that night. It was about, she said, some few minutes before 10 o'clock. And she says, we were going up around Boreen and the firing started. And she said, we crept in by the wall. We were sure they were firing at us because it was only maybe 100 yards down the road from them, just beyond the Nose pub. We crept in by the wall, she said, and we were sure that they were firing at us. And we went back down the road where we had left some of our friends, and they had come back as well. And the next thing, she said, we heard this bicycle coming at great speed and the mudguard tearing off the tyre. And that was in the road below. And what they didn't know at that time was that that was the other guard that was trying to make his escape from the people that tried to shoot him. And then that guard went back to the barracks, and the man that was in the barracks that night was a fellow by the name of Smith, Sergeant Smith. He was Jimmy Smith, the great Clare hurler father. He was from, I think, County Minihan. So anyway, the following morning, there was a full-scale murder hunt on in Fanore. A full-scale murder hunt on in Fanore. My mother had been out earlier that night. She had seen people assemble on the road. All the other friends that were with her had seen people assemble on the road near to where the ambush took place. And I suppose rural Ireland being what it is, what they thought, what they knew they saw on the evening is what they thought they saw the following day, because when they went home, they were told to shut up, say nothing. You didn't see anybody. So the guards had statements taken from them. They retracted those statements in court. They were warned. Now, they were very, very young people. So the guards, I suppose to their detriment, they tried to get anybody for the murder. Anybody. People who were sympathisers to the IRA were brought in that night and they were interviewed. 3 weeks after the murder, or maybe 2 weeks after the murder, they were charged. 2 or 3 of them were charged with the murder of Garda Dowling. Now, what one of the great, I suppose, intrigues of the whole mystery was that these were ordinary people, Fanore, and they had left at that stage. They would no more than have left the primary school. There was no secondary school education that time. But the way that they fought their case, and what they came up with, to beat the guards and to beat the High Court and to beat the whole system, what they came up with was superb evidence of everybody knew everything and nobody knew anything. And that's what, when they were tried by 3 judges, they were tried by 4 judges, first in the district court and then in the Central Criminal Court. And the jury failed at all times to convict any of them. And remember, like at this time, that if they were found guilty, they were to be home. That was 1925. If they were to be home. That was it. They were to be home. So the 3 people were found, and this is very, very important. And I think this gave me the great scope to write the book. The 3 of them were found not guilty, and that must be marked in any documentary or any lecture I give. Those 3 people were found not guilty of the murder of Garda Dowling. There was nobody ever found for the murder of Garda Dowling. I think what went against the police was, that they tried to blame it on people that may be involved a little bit local knowledge, but they were found not guilty, and there was nobody ever found guilty for the murder of Garda Dowling. Some of those people, they went to America after the people that had been the people that had been charged went to America and lived their lives. McNamara, who had been the man supposedly to be shot, that night he went to Australia and he joined the Australian police and lived his life very happy there. And things settled down in Fanore. But then in 1929, to go to the Tullycrine box bomb, and it was much the same. There was agrarian trouble over land, and there was a unit in Cranny. T.J. Ryan was the commandant there, and he had John Daly from Boran, and there was 8 or 10 of them there in a very close-knit unit that went on to take the fight to the guards again. But there was one guard there. He was a fellow by the name of John Driscoll from Sherkin Island, and John. No, I couldn't get a record of him having said he never served in the IRA, and it's worthy to note that Tom Dowling that was killed in Fanore was an IRA commandant. That sadness of that. He was an IRA commandant and he fought for the IRA, and that was the terrible sadness of it. And O'Driscoll, I could never find had fought with anybody, but he gave the West Clare IRA unit brigade an awful time. He hounded them morning, noon and night. He was on their case morning, noon and night. So they decided they would get rid of him by a booby trap bomb. Now, when I started to research it again, when I was told it was the wrong man that was killed, when I started to research the Tullycrine box bomb, I was told that it was in a brown paper bag it came, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a timber box. It was a small timber box, the same size as that of a shoebox. So what they did to trap John O'Driscoll, he was stationed in Knox Station, which is just down off the estuary on the Shannon. So they wrote a note to him. They got a typist to write a note to him that there was a box of ammunition and information. It was at a crossroads which was maybe 3 or 4 miles away from Knox Station, and that he should go and collect it. The letter stated that, will you please go and collect this? This is from an ordinary citizen who has found this ammunition and letters and names of people who are attached to the local IRA, will you please get the box and destroy it and destroy all this inside in it. I don't want to get in trouble with anybody around here. To a signed farmer. So sure enough, when he got this anonymous letter, he told no one about it. So he sat up on his bicycle after being off duty, and it was about maybe 9:45 of a lovely June evening. So he drove to the crossroads, and inside in the meadow where he was told to go, he went in to look for this shoebox, this timber shoebox. So he was on his way out, he couldn't find it, so he was on his way out, and sure enough, there to us, stuck in the grass, was the timber shoebox. So he caught it, and he gave it a little shake. He was a little bit doubtful about it. So anyway, his friend had been, where there was agrarian trouble, his friend was in duty, a fellow by the name of Garda John Cusick from Wexford. He was on duty, maybe a mile down the road. So he said, you know what, I'll bring it down to him. And both of us will have a look at it. So anyway, he put it in the carrier, he rolled it up in his coat and he put it in the carrier of his bicycle. And down he went to John Cusick. And the two of them were looking at this shoebox, timber shoebox. And they thought it was, that time, a booby trap bomb was called a black hen's egg. That was the name of it that time. So they thought that it was a black hen's egg. They were kind of suspicious of it. So who comes along anyway? Only another guard off duty, Timothy O'Sullivan from High Street in Skibbereen in Cork. And now it was said that Tig might have had a few pints after work and that he might have had more bravo in him than the other boys. So they were looking at the box anyway, and they said, look, we won't actually physically open it, but what we'll do is we'll get a bit of barbed wire which was on the gate going into where Garda Cusick was minding the farm. So they uncoiled about maybe 4 or 5 meters or 4 or 5 yards that time of the barbed wire, and they tied it to the hasp in the box because they said surely the hasp would be the trigger. So they moved back behind the little hut where the guard was to shelter him. So they pulled on the hasp and it came up. Nothing doing. So they tried it again and they tried it again. And this next time they put a stone against it to give it a little bit of leverage that they might be able to chuck it. No good. So Tig said, look, there can't be too much in it. There can't be too much in it. I'll open it. So he went down on one knee. And he grabbed the box, and the box was dovetailed. It had come up straight. It was very well made. So when Tig lifted the cover of the box, it blew him to pieces. It blew John O'Driscoll maybe 10 or 15 or 20 yards down the field, as it did John Cusick. And it blew when they came back up after getting some of their senses. Tig was blown to pieces. Now, what they put into the bomb, I suppose, like the broken pot, what they put into the bomb that time was awful. It was terrible. They put in gelignite, they put in cheddite, they put in horseshoe nails into it. Some people said that the actual box was put together with horseshoe nails, bare at the top, where it was dovetailed. They put in ball bearings as well, lead ball bearings, and they fired it up with one of the old flash lamp ever-ready batteries. So when the connection was made, when the top came off, that's what actually triggered the bomb to go off. So when I started writing the book, I suppose, so anyway, that time again, then the hunt was on in West Clare, of course, for the local IRA unit. Who made the bomb? Who made the box? Who wrote the letter? Who put the bomb together? All those things were opened up. And again, the guards erred, I would say, in that they wanted to pull TJ Ryan and all the local IRA people in. They got handwriting, signed, the letter was signed Farmer, and they tried to blame it on TJ Ryan, and they tried to blame it on the local IRA unit to their detriment. They gave them an awful time. They gave them a terrible, terrible, terrible local people. The guards turned the local people against them. But even if they didn't turn the local people against them, it was still there was a fear there. You couldn't give information. An informer was the worst type of person in Ireland. Nobody would tell. Annie Behan told me a great story that, that they offered money. They offered money to people that time for information, and they set up the investigation unit in Murty Brown's pub now in Tullycrine, and they were hoping that the people would come in and they would give them drink, and I suppose maybe hoping that when they'd be half drunk that their tongues might loosen a bit. And as Annie Behan said, nobody came, she says, and nobody spoke. And I couldn't find out, how did they make the bomb? That was fierce sophisticated at that time. Now I went into, I went up to Barrymartin McGuinness up in the Bogside, and I found, I got into the stronghold of the IRA there, told them what I was doing, telling them the story of the freedom fighters and also of the guards, because they were all good people. All these were good people. People thought when I was going writing the book, it was going to be the guards versus the IRA or the freedom fighters. It's not at all. It's telling the story of a group of two great people, two great organisations, two great people. One people trying to keep the peace, the other crowd trying to give us our freedom. So they taught me how it was put together in the Bogside. And I suppose maybe 50 years after the Tullycrine bomb went off, Madigan's in Killimer, Michael was building his house, and his new house, and the old house was just down off of it. So he knocked the old house to put the foundation, put stones into the foundation, and built into the chimney, not up the chimney, built into the chimney of the house was when they took out a stone on the chimney, they found the cheddite, dynamite, detonators, and a British Army manual how to make a booby trap bomb. So the chances are, not for sure, the chances are that the booby trap bomb was made in Madigan's house in Killimer by a British Army expert who had kind of left the army. I think he might have been a chemist. So that's the echoes of the Civil War. That's the book. I have told the story in the book from the great people, the people, the freedom fighters of the past. That's my story in the book. I have told the story in truth, and I would repeat: it's not a book it's not a book of blame. It's a book of a story of brave people that fought for our freedom back in the 1920s, the 1880s. Back, you can go back into the Bowdyke evictions, the Vandalours, all those people that fought the case for us up along, fought for us and fought against each other. The saddest war of all was our Civil War. We fought the Tans, we fought the War of Independence, we fought the Danes, and then we fought ourselves. That was the sadness of the Civil War, and thank God it didn't last too long. Some people would ask, is it still on? And I suppose maybe in places it is, where there's old gripes there about land and about people that took land and one thing and another. And that's the story I have on the echoes from the Civil War. That's the book. And I think that people that will read it will find maybe the photographs, of all those people. They were just people that existed. Now when you open the book, you can get T.J. Ryan, you can get Tygo O'Sullivan, you can get the priest that came out in the night to anoint them. And that's the story that I told in Echoes from a Civil War. That's the story that must be told, and people must not be afraid to tell their stories that they have. Tell them in truth, and then you have nothing to worry about.